Episode 17, The Waiting Hours. Marcus descended into the subway station, the wire taped against his ribs feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The afternoon crowd pushed past him, office workers heading home early, students with backpacks, an elderly woman clutching shopping bags. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the young man with the canvas bag was carrying evidence that could bring down a crime family, or get him killed in 11 hours. The train rattled north through tunnels that had become as familiar as breathing over the past 3 days. Marcus found a seat in the corner, positioning himself so he could watch both doors. The wire specialist Rodriguez had warned him not to touch the device, not to adjust it, not to do anything that might draw attention. "Pretend it doesn't exist," Rodriguez had said. "The more you think about it, the more you'll fidget, and fidgeting gets you noticed." Marcus forced himself to sit still, hands resting on the canvas bag in his lap. Inside were photocopies of his father's evidence, the notebook, the photographs, the documentation of 20 years of DeLuca crimes. The originals were now in FBI custody, logged and cataloged, part of an official chain of evidence. If something happened to him tonight, at least the truth wouldn't die with him. The thought should have been comforting. It wasn't. The train emerged from the tunnel into the gray November afternoon. Through the window, Marcus could see the Bronx stretching out below, rooftops and water towers, streets he'd walked 100 times since arriving in New York. 3 days ago, he'd been nobody, just another foster kid with $23 and a canvas bag full of a dead man's secrets. Now he was bait in an FBI operation, wired for sound, counting down hours until a confrontation that might end with his body in the East River. "Next stop, 161st Street, the conductor announced. Marcus stood, gripping the overhead rail as the train slowed. His father had ridden these same trains 20 years ago, traveling to and from the docks where the DeLucas ran their operation. Had James Chen known he was walking toward his death? Had he felt this same sick certainty in his stomach? This knowledge that some paths only led one direction? The platform was crowded with the late afternoon rush. Marcus merged into the flow of bodies, keeping his head down, scanning for the thick-built enforcer or anyone else who might be watching. The DeLucas knew he'd met with Hutchins. They knew about Sarah Chen and the FBI, but did they know about the wire? Did they suspect he was walking into their trap already wired to spring one of his own? Sal Benedetto's words echoed in his mind. "You're predictable, Marcus. Scared. That makes you manageable." The old enforcer thought Marcus would show up tonight with the evidence, ready to cooperate, ready to take his $10,000 and disappear to California or Florida. Sal thought he'd won. Marcus climbed the stairs to street level, emerging onto 161st Street. The November wind cut through his jacket, and he pulled it tighter, careful not to disturb the wire underneath. The streets were busy with people heading home from work, and Marcus joined them, walking the 15 minutes toward the Youth Alliance with his collar turned up against the cold. He circled the block twice, watching for surveillance. A black sedan parked on the corner made his heart jump, but it was empty, no one inside. He scanned the stoops, the bodega entrances, the alley mouths. Nothing obvious. The DeLucas might be watching, but if they were being subtle about it. Or maybe they didn't need to watch anymore. Maybe they were so confident in their control of the situation that surveillance was unnecessary. Marcus would show up at Pier 47 at 9 o'clock because he had no other choice. Why waste resources tracking him? The thought was simultaneously terrifying and encouraging. Marcus approached the Youth Alliance from the back, slipping into the alley that ran behind the building. The Chinese restaurant next door was starting dinner service, and the smell of garlic and ginger made his stomach growl. He hadn't eaten since the sandwich at the Federal Building, and his body was reminding him that fear didn't eliminate hunger. The back door was unlocked. Marcus slipped inside, moving through the storage room with its folding chairs and art supplies, into the main space where Jimmy's office light glowed warm and yellow. "Marcus." Jimmy looked up from his desk, relief washing over his face. "Thank God. Teresa's been asking about you every 20 minutes. Sorry." Marcus closed the door behind him. "The meeting ran longer than I expected." Jimmy studied him with those shrewd eyes that had seen too much in Korea. eyes that could read fear and determination in equal measure. "You look different. What happened?" Marcus hesitated. Rodriguez had been clear. "Don't tell anyone about the wire. Not friends, not family, nobody. The fewer people who know, the better." But Jimmy had already risked so much, had already become part of this, whether he wanted to or not. "I met with people who can help," Marcus said carefully. "Tonight's plan is still on, 9 o'clock at Pier 47. "And these people who can help? They're going to be there?" "Close enough." Jimmy stood, moving to the small refrigerator in the corner. He pulled out 2 bottles of Coca-Cola, twisted off the caps, and handed one to Marcus. "Sit down. You look like you're about to fall over." Marcus sank into the chair across from Jimmy's desk, the wire pressing against his ribs as he settled. The cold Coke was heaven on his dry throat, and he drank half the bottle in one long pull. "Teresa made sandwiches," Jimmy said. "Ham and cheese. They're in the fridge if you want one." "Later, maybe." Marcus set down the bottle. "What time is it?" Jimmy glanced at his watch. 4:30. 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours until he had to leave for Pier 47. 4.5 hours to wait and think and feel the wire against his skin and wonder if the DeLucas would search him, strip him, find the device, and put a bullet in his head before the FBI could move in. "You don't have to do this," Jimmy said quietly. "Whatever you're planning, whatever these people told you, you don't have to go through with it. You could still walk away." "No," Marcus said. "I couldn't." "Why not? What's stopping you from getting on a bus tonight and disappearing? You're 25 years old, Marcus. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Your father's been dead for 20 years. Nothing you do tonight will bring him back." Marcus looked at the older man, this Korean War veteran who understood what it meant to face death for something bigger than yourself. "You walked into enemy fire in Korea. Why?" Jimmy was quiet for a long moment. "Because my brothers were counting on me. Because if I ran, someone else would die in my place. Because some things are worth dying for." "Exactly." Marcus finished his Coke. "My father died trying to stop the DeLucas. If I walk away now, he died for nothing. And they'll keep doing what they've been doing. Hurting people, corrupting cops, running their operations like they own this city. Someone has to stop them. And that someone has to be you. I'm the only one with the evidence. I'm the only one who can finish what my father started." Marcus set the empty bottle on the desk. "Besides, they've already threatened Robert and Diane. They've already made it clear that everyone I care about is a target. Running doesn't make me safe. It just means I'm running scared for the rest of my life." Jimmy nodded slowly. "Your father would be proud of you and terrified for you, both at the same time. That's what everyone keeps saying." The door opened, and Teresa poked her head in. Her face lit up when she saw Marcus. "You're back." "I was getting worried." She stepped inside, carrying a paper bag. "I brought dinner. Figured you might be hungry." The smell of hot food made Marcus's stomach clench with sudden hunger. Teresa unpacked the bag on Jimmy's desk, 2 ham and cheese sandwiches, a bag of chips, an apple, and a chocolate chip cookie wrapped in wax paper. "You're an angel," Marcus said, reaching for a sandwich. "Just doing what I can." Teresa sat on the edge of the desk, watching him eat. "Jimmy says you've been working on lesson plans for next week's classes." Marcus caught Jimmy's eye. The older man had obviously told Teresa a cover story, something to explain Marcus's presence without revealing the danger. "Yeah," Marcus said around a mouthful of sandwich. "Getting everything organized. The kids are excited. They keep asking when you're coming back." Teresa smiled. "Especially Maria. She wants to know if you'll teach her how to draw portraits." The normalcy of the conversation felt surreal. Here he was, wired for an FBI operation, counting down hours until a potentially fatal confrontation, and Teresa was talking about art classes and excited teenagers. But maybe that was the point. Maybe that's what he was fighting for. The right for kids like Maria to learn to draw portraits without worrying about crime families and corrupt cops and fathers who got murdered for doing the right thing. "I'll teach her," Marcus said. "Next week, I promise." Teresa beamed. "Good, I'll let her know." She glanced at Jimmy. "I've got to finish up the homework room before I head out. Marcus, you need anything else?" "I'm good, thank you, Teresa." She squeezed his shoulder as she left, and Marcus felt a pang of guilt. She had no idea what was really happening, no idea that the young man she was mothering might be dead by midnight. Maybe that was better. Maybe ignorance was a kindness. Jimmy waited until the door closed before speaking. She's a good kid, reminds me of my daughter. You have a daughter? Had. She died in a car accident 5 years ago. Drunk driver. Jimmy's voice was steady, but his eyes held old pain. 23 years old, her whole life ahead of her, and some asshole with a bottle took it all away. I'm sorry. Me too. Jimmy picked up the empty Coke bottles, tossing them in the trash. That's why I run this place. That's why I give kids like you and Teresa somewhere safe to be. Because if I can save even one person from the kind of pain I went through, then maybe Sarah's death meant something. Marcus finished his sandwich, understanding now why Jimmy had taken him in so readily, why he'd offered sanctuary without asking too many questions. They were both men trying to make meaning out of loss, trying to turn tragedy into something that mattered. What time do you need to leave? Jimmy asked. 8:30. Gives me time to get to Pier 47 by 9. Jimmy checked his watch again. 4 hours. You should rest. The back room's still available. Marcus stood, shouldering his canvas bag. The wire shifted slightly against his ribs, and he forced himself not to react. I don't think I can sleep. Then don't sleep. Just lie down. Close your eyes. Give your body a break. Jimmy moved to the office door, opening it. I'll make sure nobody bothers you. And Marcus, if you change your mind, if you decide you want to run instead, I'll help you. No questions, no judgment. Just say the word. I won't change my mind. I know, but the offer stands anyway. The back room was small and dim, lit only by the gray light filtering through a high window. The cot Jimmy had mentioned was pushed against the wall, covered with a thin blanket. Marcus set his canvas bag on the floor beside it and sat down, the wire pressing uncomfortably against his side. He pulled out his father's notebook, the original, not the copy the FBI had made. Rodriguez had let him keep it, understanding that Marcus needed something to hold on to, some tangible connection to the man whose death had started all of this. Marcus opened to a random page, his father's neat handwriting filling the lines. November 8th, 1953. Watched DeLuca operation at Pier 47 tonight. 3 trucks arrived between midnight and 2 a.m. Cargo unloaded into warehouse. Crates marked as machine parts but wrong weight distribution. Sal Benedetto supervised. 2 men I recognized from the docks, Tony Giordano and Frank Russo. Police patrol drove past at 12:45 a.m. but didn't stop. Either paid off, Pier 47. His father had documented DeLuca operations at Pier 47 20 years ago, and now Marcus was going back to the same location to finish what James Chen had started. The symmetry was either poetic or horrifying, and Marcus couldn't decide which. He flipped through more pages, reading his father's careful documentation of crimes, corruption, violence. James Chen had spent years building this case, photographing operations, recording conversations, gathering evidence that should have put the DeLucas away forever. Instead, it had gotten him killed. His body fed into a factory machine while corrupt cops looked the other way. Marcus closed the notebook, holding it against his chest. I'm going to finish it, Dad, he whispered to the empty room. Tonight, one way or another. The hours crawled past. Marcus lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the Youth Alliance, Teresa's voice in the homework room, the bounce of a basketball in the gym, Jimmy's footsteps in the hallway. Normal sounds, safe sounds, the sounds of a life Marcus might never get to live. At 6 o'clock, Jimmy brought him another sandwich and a cup of coffee. You should eat. Keep your strength up. Marcus forced down the food, tasting nothing. The coffee was bitter and strong, and he drank it black, needing the caffeine to cut through the fog of fear and exhaustion. At 7 o'clock, the Youth Alliance began to empty. Kids heading home for dinner, Teresa calling goodbyes, the basketball game ending with the squeak of sneakers and laughter. The building grew quiet, just Marcus and Jimmy and the weight of what was coming. At 8 o'clock, Marcus stood up, shouldering his canvas bag. The wire felt like it was burning against his skin, a brand marking him as either hero or fool. He stepped out of the back room, finding Jimmy in his office, staring at papers he wasn't really reading. It's time, Marcus said. Jimmy looked up, his face grave. You sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Jimmy stood, moving around the desk. For a moment, Marcus thought the older man might try to stop him, might physically block the door and refuse to let him leave. Instead, Jimmy pulled him into a brief, fierce hug. "Come back," Jimmy said. "Promise me you'll come back." "I'll try." "That's not good enough. Promise me." Marcus pulled back, meeting Jimmy's eyes. "I promise I'll do everything I can to survive tonight. That's the best I can offer." Jimmy nodded, accepting the qualified promise. "Then go. And Marcus, your father would be proud. Whatever happens tonight, remember that." Marcus left through the back door, stepping into the November darkness. The temperature had dropped, and his breath misted in the cold air. The wire pressed against his ribs with every step, a constant reminder of the FBI agents who would be watching from the shadows, recording everything, waiting for the DeLucas to incriminate themselves. Waiting for Marcus to either be their hero or their martyr. He walked to the subway station, descended into the tunnels, boarded the train heading south toward Manhattan. The car was half empty, just a few scattered passengers reading newspapers or dozing. Marcus sat in the corner, hands on his canvas bag, and watched the darkness outside the windows. Pier 47 was in Red Hook, Brooklyn, DeLuca territory, a place where they operated openly, where cops looked the other way and witnesses knew better than to talk. The FBI would have agents positioned around the area, but they couldn't move in until they had sufficient evidence on tape. Marcus had to get the DeLucas talking, had to get them to confess to current crimes, had to survive long enough for the recording to be useful. If the DeLucas searched him and found the wire, he was dead. If he couldn't get them talking, the operation was a failure. If the FBI couldn't move in fast enough, he was dead. So many ways for this to go wrong. The train rattled through the tunnels, carrying Marcus toward his father's legacy and his own possible death. He closed his eyes, feeling the wire against his skin, and thought about James Chen riding these same trains 20 years ago, carrying his own evidence, making his own plans to expose the DeLucas. His father had failed. The corruption had been too deep, the DeLucas too powerful, and James Chen had died screaming in a factory machine, while the men he'd trusted to help him stood by and did nothing. Marcus wouldn't fail. He couldn't. Too many people were counting on him. Robert and Diane in their hospital beds, Frank Kowalski waiting for news, Jimmy Reese praying for his safe return, Teresa and the kids at the Youth Alliance who deserved to live in a world where crime families didn't run the city, and his father. Most of all, his father, whose 20 years of silence would finally be broken. "Next stop, Clark Street," the conductor announced. Marcus opened his eyes. 2 more stops until Red Hook. 2 more stops until Pier 47. 2 more stops until everything changed. He stood as the train slowed, gripping the overhead rail, feeling the wire shift against his ribs. The FBI was out there somewhere, watching, waiting, ready to move in when the time was right. Sarah Chen was coordinating from a command center, listening to every word through the wire's transmission. Agent Davidson and his team were positioned around the pier, cameras ready, backup plans in place. But Marcus was the one who had to walk into the lion's den. Marcus was the one who had to face Sal Benedetto and whoever else the DeLucas sent. Marcus was the one wearing the wire that could either bring justice or get him killed. The train pulled into Clark Street Station. Marcus stepped onto the platform, joining the thin crowd heading for the exits. The November night was cold and clear, stars visible above the city lights. Somewhere out there, his father's ghost was watching, waiting to see if his son could finish what he'd started. Marcus climbed the stairs to street level, emerging into Red Hook. The neighborhood was quiet, industrial buildings and warehouses looming in the darkness. Pier 47 was 6 blocks away, and Marcus started walking, his footsteps echoing on the empty sidewalk. With each step, he felt the wire against his ribs. With each step, he thought about his father. With each step, he moved closer to the confrontation that would either redeem 20 years of silence or add Marcus's name to the list of people the DeLucas had murdered. The pier came into view, a dark shape against the darker water. No lights, no obvious activity, but Marcus knew they were there, waiting for him. The DeLucas never missed an appointment. He checked his watch, 8:57 p.m., 3 minutes until 9 o'clock. 3 minutes until he walked onto that pier and faced the men who had killed his father. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the wire press against his skin, and started toward the pier. Somewhere in the shadows, FBI agents were watching. Somewhere in a command center, Sarah Chen was listening. Somewhere in the Bronx, Jimmy Reese was praying. But here, now, Marcus was alone. He reached the entrance to the pier, a chain-link gate hanging open. Beyond it, the wooden planks stretched out over the water, disappearing into darkness. No sign of the DeLucas, no sign of anyone. Marcus stepped through the gate, his footsteps hollow on the wooden pier. The water lapped against the pilings below, a soft sound that should have been peaceful but felt ominous. The November wind cut through his jacket, and he pulled it tighter, careful not to disturb the wire. "Hello?" he called into the darkness. "I'm here, Marcus Chen. I'm here like you said." Silence, just the wind and the water and his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Then, from the shadows at the end of the pier, a voice. "Come forward, Marcus. We've been waiting for you." Sal Benedetto's voice. Calm, almost friendly, as if they were meeting for coffee instead of a confrontation that might end in murder. Marcus walked forward, the wire recording every step, every breath, every word. The FBI was listening. Sarah Chen was listening. His father's ghost was listening. And at the end of the pier, in the darkness where the DeLucas waited, Marcus Chen walked toward justice or death, ready to finish what his father had started 20 years ago.
Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures. Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures.